Okay, I'm back to Darlie Routier Fact and Fiction. It was written by our friend Mary Moody. It's been around for quite a long time. She put a lot of effort into this, and it basically goes through issues in the trial. It's slanted toward the Darlie is guilty side, but I want to be sure to have this in video form, just in case that the website disappears on us over the years. I'm going to put this all in one playlist as well. I've already done the introduction, the who's who, and the Routier statements. This time I'm going to go through the arrest warrant. The arrest warrant. Affidavit for arrest warrant, subscribed and sworn June 18, 1996. Before Darlie and Darren came back down to the police department, you'll see the clip of them walking in the Rowlett Police Department with Jimmy Patterson. They already had this warrant drawn up. I believe they had it drawn up before she was interrogated by Bill Parker. I believe that they knew they were going to arrest her. From Jimmy Patterson. Jimmy Patterson's one that wrote this up. He's the lead detective on the case. He still works for the Rowlett Police Department. He's a lieutenant now. He was actually, about 2 years ago, Officer of the Year in Texas. For my review of the 911 tape and my discussions with Darlie, her husband Darren Routier, paramedics and officers, I know the following. Officers and paramedics arriving at the scene found Darlie Routier, Darren Routier, and their sons Devin Routier, 6 years old, and Damon Routier, 5 years old, in the downstairs portion of the house in the rear living area on the southwest corner of the house. Devin had been stabbed multiple times, including major penetrating wounds to his chest. Damon had multiple wounds, including approximately 5 major penetrating wounds to his back. Darlie had a slashing wound to her neck, a minor stab wound to her left shoulder, minor cuts to the creases of the last knuckles on the palm side of her left fingers, a minor cut or scrape on the left side of her chin, and a laceration to the top of her forearm. I want to say something about Darlie's wounds really quickly. When you have hesitation wounds, and there are hesitation wounds on Darlie, they are described as hesitation wounds. In the slice of the neck, there's hesitation wounds there. Even on the cut to the arm, just above that, you can see a small cut. Those are hesitation wounds. Hesitation wounds are classic with self-inflicted wounds. They are classic. I mean, if it's a self-inflicted wound, there's always a hesitation wound because it hurts. And people are testing to see how far they need to go. But I'll get into more of that later. When the 911 call began, Darlie referred to the assailant as they, although she told Sergeant Walling, the second officer at the scene, that the assailant was a single white male, possibly wearing a dark-colored ball cap, blue jeans, and a black shirt. Darlie told me later, shortly after 6 a.m. that morning, that the assailant was one male, probably white, with shoulder-length hair, a black baseball cap with a bill facing front, and a black pullover shirt, short-sleeved t-shirt, blue jeans. Darlie told the 911 dispatcher that my little boy is dying, and later, my babies are dying, despite the fact that she knew that one or both of the boys were still alive. That's another thing too with she was very quick to accept the fact that they were dead. I mean, there's something to that. She just automatically, they're dead. Waddell has told me that Darlie never made attempts to stop their bleeding, touch them, or render other first aid. Before going to the garage, Waddell told her twice to take the rag that she was holding to apply pressure to the wounds of the younger child who had been stabbed in the back, but she never went to the child or attempted to help him, although she said in a later written statement that she put a towel on his back before police arrived. Now, Darlie, they keep saying Darlie didn't know what to do, she didn't know what to do, blah, 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 but she knew to hold that, she knew to apply pressure to her own wound. She knew that. And that's why she didn't take the pressure off her own wound. She's more worried about herself. She stood at the end of that bar, according to a few of the first responders, and she did not help. When Darren said that she came to help hold that chest wound together, he lied. And she did not help him. That is why he went. He said he screamed at Waddell to help, and then Waddell couldn't help. Because if Waddell was down helping the child and the intruder jumped out, he's not going to. Police protocol is to secure the house. All right? Then he had to run over and get Karen because he needed help. Waddell remarked that Darlie was instead preoccupied with the minor wound on her neck, and she kept the rag pressed to it. Darlie told Waddell upon his arrival that the assailant had gone out the utility room into the garage and out the house through the garage. Waddell went to the utility room and garage to look for the assailant. He saw no one in the garage. While Waddell and Walling were in the garage, they saw that one of the garage windows leading to the backyard of the house was open and that the screen was split. The funny thing about the screen being split is Mosty was asking Charles Lynch on the stand. He's like, that's a funny way to slit that screen. I mean, would that be the way you would do it? And he said, no, I'd just pop it off. And then the whole courtroom started kind of laughing about that. Darlie initially told officers at the scene and me at the hospital that same morning that she was asleep in the family room on the couch, which sits parallel to the west wall of the house. All right? And awoke to find the assailant standing over her with a knife in his hand. She said she had then struggled with him, and that he then walked away through the kitchen into the utility room, and then out of the house through the garage, which adjoined the utility room. In this story, Darlie told us that she saw the assailant drop the knife in the utility room. Darlie told officers at the scene that she realized she had been stabbed while she was on the couch. She told me that she realized when she had been stabbed only after she found the knife. When she gave me a written statement on June 8th, she changed her story to say that she woke with Damon, the younger child, pressing on her shoulder, and the assailant was standing down by her feet at the end of the couch, walking away from her. In the written statement, Darlie did not mention the knife until she says she realized there was a big white-handled knife laying on the floor of the utility room when she followed the assailant there from the kitchen. In the written statement, Darlie said that she had picked up the knife, thinking he was in the garage. When Darlie later drew a diagram of the house for me, which is attached to this affidavit as Exhibit A, she told me that the assailant ran away and that she ran behind him into the kitchen. At that time, Darlie told me that she didn't see the knife on the utility room floor until she went back to the kitchen doorway near the family room to turn on the light. And then she saw the knife by looking over the kitchen island toward the utility room floor. When I examined the scene after she told me this version of her story, I was unable to see the utility room floor from the vicinity of the light switch by looking across over the kitchen island, because the island is too large and I am taller than Darlie. During the 911 call, after about 4 minutes had passed and the first officer had apparently arrived, Darlie said, Look out in the garage. They left a knife laying on the," and the dispatcher told her, "Don't touch anything," to which Darlie replied, "I already touched it and picked it up." Darlie later told the dispatcher again that she had touched the knife. 5 minutes into the call, and while her dying children were still on the floor in front of her, she said, "I wonder if we could have gotten prints, maybe." That's a very strange thing to say. The very beginning, the very first thing she says about the 911 call is making her alibi. Somebody came in here, they broke in, they stabbed me and my babies. That's the first thing she said. The first thing she got out of the way is that somebody else did this. They broke in. Somebody else did this. During the 911 call, there is no mention of or sound from Darren until 43 seconds into the call, after which a male voice is first heard. Darlie told the 911 dispatcher that "my husband just ran downstairs," but she never asked him or mentions during the call her 8-month-old baby, who Darlie and Darren later told us was sleeping upstairs with Darren at the time of the offense. Now, from talking to the officers involved in reviewing their reports, that Rowlett patrol officers secured the crime scene and maintained it until crime scene physical evidence officers arrived at the scene within 2 or 3 hours of the 911 call. Sergeant Neighbors, Rowlett physical evidence supervisor, personally surveyed the scene and made a preliminary report, which I have read. Neighbors also sought the assistance of retired County Sheriff Lieutenant James Cron to help examine the scene, because Cron has extensive experience in examination of murder crime scenes. Cron also sent some preliminary reports, which I have reviewed. We also received assistance from Richardson Police Physical Evidence Supervisor Jeff Craig, who helped obtain evidence from the kitchen and other areas. From my own investigation of the scene, as well as my discussions with Sergeant Neighbors, Lieutenant Cron, and Mr. Craig, my review of their reports, I have learned the following facts inconsistent with Darlie Routier's stories to us. Although Darlie has consistently said that the assailant fled the house through the garage, there was no blood found in the garage, on the window, in the garage, or on the white wood fence or gate surrounding the backyard, even though the assailant would have had to leave the backyard over the fence or through the gate. The overhead garage door, the only way out of the garage besides the windows, was closed and latched from the inside when police arrived. And Darlie has never told us that she heard a door open or close. The windowsills had a layer of dust on them which was undisturbed. Mulch on the flower beds between the garage and backyard gate was undisturbed in the morning hours after the offense when Cron examined it. Although Darlie told us that she followed the assailant through the kitchen and heard him breaking glass ahead of her, the only broken glass found on or around the house was a wine glass, which was broken on the kitchen floor. Bloody footprints were found on the kitchen floor and photographed by physical evidence investigators at the scene. These footprints were all made by a single-sized set of bare feet. Darlie was barefoot when officers arrived at the scene. The broken wine glass on the kitchen floor was found lying on top of one of the bloody footprints. The footprints appear to have been left on the floor before the glass was broken on top of it. We examined Darlie's feet and took footprints, with her consent on June the 10th. I have seen the footprints on the kitchen floor and the footprints taken from Darlie and her husband Darren, and the footprints on the floor appear to me to be the same size as Darlie's prints. Although the broken glass was near and on top of the prints on the floor, Darlie had no injuries to the bottom of her feet 4 days after the offense. Darren also had no injuries to his feet, and his feet were much larger than Darlie's. All of the bloody footprints on the kitchen floor led from the kitchen sink area back toward the family room where the offense occurred. There were no bloody footprints leading into the utility room, where Darlie says she followed the assailant. There was also an upright vacuum cleaner overturned in the kitchen with blood on its handle. The vacuum would have appeared to have been overturned in a struggle or by accident, except that it was overturned on top of blood drops and bloody bare footprints leading to the family room. Although Darlie has sometimes told us that she found the knife in the utility room floor, Cron has examined the floor and told me that he found no blood spatters or other marks consistent with the bloody murder weapon being dropped in that floor. Although Darlie has never mentioned to us being near the kitchen sink, which is on the west wall of the kitchen during or after the offense, the physical evidence investigators examined that area and determined that there had been significant quantities of blood shed and dripped immediately in front of that sink. Although attempts had been made to clean the countertop, tests with luminol revealed the top of the counter revealed blood on top of the counter and in front of the sink. Neighbors, Cron, and other officers and I have all examined the couch where Darlie says she was sleeping when she was attacked. I want to stop right here for just a minute, because here recently Danelle put out a TikTok video, and I believe I recorded it. She said Cron didn't even know which couch to look at. He was looking at the wrong couch. She's telling the public this, that Cron was looking at the wrong couch. There was the long couch that was in front of the sliding glass doors. Then there was another one that was in front of the bar area, not a couch, but more like a love seat. And then there was a leather chair on the other side. But she'll have you believe that Cron didn't even look at the right couch. I think she's putting out less and less videos now because we keep catching her in lies. It's a damn joke to her. Although there are quantities of blood throughout the room and around the boys, there was no appreciable blood on the couch where Darlie's head, neck, and shoulders were located at the time she says she was stabbed by her assailant. Cron's opinion from this blood evidence is that Darlie self-inflicted her own wounds while standing in the kitchen sink. The murder weapon, a wooden block knife holder from the kitchen, and the cut screen and the uncut screen from the garage windows, among other things, were seized at the scene by the Rowlett police officers and turned over to Charlie Lynch, a forensic analyst employed by the Southwest Institute of Forensic Sciences in Dallas. Mr. Lynch performed tests on the undamaged screen taken from the garage and compared residue from that screen and residue found on the one of the knives taken from the kitchen. His opinion is that the garage screen found cut by police and through which the assailant supposedly exited and or entered the house was cut from the outside of the house using a knife from Darlie's kitchen, which knife was recovered from the woodblock container after the offense. Lynch also had told me that the murder weapon matches the set contained in the woodblock container taken from the kitchen, and the murder weapon is consistent with the slot that the wooden block container from which the one knife was missing when the block was seized by police. So you can see on the arrest warrant that she has that the police put it in there specifically that it was cut from the outside of the house. Now, right behind the couch that Darlie was laying on, there's a set of sliding glass doors. And people wonder, well, how could she get out there and cut that? I believe she slipped outside those sliding glass doors and cut that screen and then went right back in. I also believe that's how she got out to run that sock. One author said that she slipped out, that she did the test and she slipped out the sliding glass doors that are right behind the couch, opened the gate and ran the sock down the alley and brought it back in and got slipped back into the house in 50 seconds. Lynch has also told me that the murder weapon matches the set contained in the wood block container taken from the kitchen, and the murder weapon is consistent with the slot wood block container. One knife was missing and the wood block was seized by police. Although Darlie initially told us that she struggled with the assailant, Cron's opinion is that the blood in the family room is inconsistent with a violent struggle. Although Darlie at some points had told us that she chased her assailant through the kitchen, the blood left in the kitchen lacks the high velocity spread pattern which would be consistent with splatters left behind by someone running through the area. When you're doing blood spatter, I may have said splatter, they determine the drops in three different forms. You have low velocity, which would be somebody just standing there, just a complete circle. Then you have medium velocity, which is somebody moving around just a little bit, leaving a small tail. Then you have high velocity, which is somebody moving quickly, like defense wound and slinging blood, but they'll leave a big tail. That's what he's talking about. There's no high velocity going through that kitchen area. I spoke today to Mike Bosillo, an investigator with the Dallas DA's office, who spoke today to Dr. McLean of the Dallas County Medical Examiner's office. Dr. McLean told Bosillo, and he told me that Dr. McLean performed the autopsy on the older child, Devin, who McLean says sustained 2 wounds to the chest. The larger of the wounds, the top of which had began above the child's right nipple and extended 2 inches in length in a downward direction, had a maximum depth of penetration of 5 inches, exiting the right chest wall on the child's back. The wound penetrated the child's rib cage, breaking the child's ribs. There's a lot of people that believe, because Devin had bruises he had one up under his thigh, and both of the heels of his feet were bruised. It's right in his autopsy. There's a lot of people that believe that he was kicking at Darlie, and that may be how she got some of her wounds. In Barb Davis's book, she explains that the knife imprint that you find on the carpet near Devin's body was because she put that knife down and held Devin down until he died. At my request, Dr. Townsend Parchment of the Dallas County Medical Examiner's office examined Darlie's injuries on June 6th, and she's told me that the wounds could have possibly been self-inflicted. Now, they have to say possibly. If there was no way that it could be self-inflicted, they would say that. Based on the above information which I have received from investigating officers, my own investigation, and Dr. McLean and Dr. Townsend Parchman, I believe that the wounds inflicted upon Darlie were of a completely different character and severity than those inflicted upon her sons. None of her wounds were deep penetrating wounds to vital areas of her bodies as such as those received by her sons. Based on those facts, I believe that someone from inside the house took a knife from the kitchen, cut the garage window screen from outside prior to the offense, and then replaced the knife in the kitchen block container, which that could have been done at any time, actually. If you think about it, it didn't have to be done. That could have been done at any time. I further believe that Darlie, anytime after Darren went to bed, I further believe that Darlie Routier's stories to police are internally inconsistent with all the physical evidence at the scene. I further believe that her repeated statements to the 911 dispatcher about her fingerprints on the knife, her lack of concern in attempts to help her dying son, and lack of concern for her remaining infant child who was upstairs during the offense, whose condition was apparently unknown to Darlie during the call, all are indicative of her guilt and inconsistent with her story that she had awakened after the violent assault on her 2 older sons and after she had been wounded. I further believe that her story that she slept through the violent stabbings of her sons only a few feet away from her and through multiple cuts inflicted on her upon herself is incredible. Based upon the facts, I believe that Darlie Routier committed capital murder of Damon Routier and Devin Routier in Dallas County, Texas, on or about June 6, 1996.